So Star Wars Outlaws. This is the combination between Disney Star Wars and Ubisoft, two troubled brands here in 2024. The recent cancellation of Star Wars Acolyte looms over the release of this game, and even Ubisoft has had their own issues this year with their game Skull and Bones, the first ever quadruple A video game flopping earlier this year. So both of these brands are kind of having their own issues right now. Is that going to have an effect on this game? I guess we will find out in this review. Now, the Disney Star Wars games, I think, have been pretty solid, actually, as much as I complain about their TV shows and movies and stuff. The Jedi games in particular are very good games, as well as Squadrons and even the Battlefront games, forgetting about the loot box controversy. I've liked their games to this point, so I go in hoping for the best, but based on what we've seen up to this point, I was going in skeptical. So I guess we'll start with the gameplay. This is an open world action stealth type of game, and I was expecting your traditional Ubisoft formula where there are a bunch of points on the map, a bunch of strongholds you got to take over, and that type of thing. I played through the whole campaign, did a little bit of the side content. Fortunately, you can just plow through the main story in about 12 hours, so if you just want to experience the story, you can get through it relatively quickly. There is quite a bit of side content here, but most of it seems to be quest lines and finding treasures. It doesn't seem to be as much of that typical Ubisoft formula as you might expect. It's more trying to model itself after games like Red Dead Redemption. Of course, that's a very high bar to reach, and this game definitely doesn't get up to that level. But this is the type of game where you're driving through the world and there will be random events that pop up, question marks and stuff like that, and there will be treasures you can find, that type of thing. So that's the type of game that this is. It's a pretty basic stealth experience where you're walking through the tall grasses and you use your best friend, because every Disney Star Wars thing needs to have a cute sidekick character that they can sell plushies of. And as much as I might make fun of that concept, I actually like this character design. It's a pretty cute character and all of that, but this character does a lot of the heavy lifting for you in the stealth combat. So pretty much you're using this character as a distraction the entire game. So you can have this character distract the enemies, they'll look over that way, you can sneak past the other direction. It's the typical type of thing where you got security cameras panning back and forth and you wait. The enemies in this game are pretty dumb, so you're just waiting for them to walk this way and then you go that way. It's pretty standard fare as far as stealth goes. I was hoping for more gadgets, even something like a taser, because you're taking out stormtroopers with like a single hit to the back of the head and they're wearing helmets. It just looks weird, doesn't quite sell it to me. I know it's a video game, so I'm willing to look past that, but they really could have bypassed that by giving her a taser or something like that. There are a few gadgets you can unlock, like smoke bombs, but for the most part, Nyx is your main character that you're sending off to do these other things for you. Nyx will also unlock doors for you that you can't reach. He can sabotage the alarms so that they can't alert enemies as much, and of course you could have him jump on the enemy's head so that you can sneak behind them and do the one tap X to knock them out and or kill them. So it's a pretty basic stealth experience, even from the standpoint of like an open world game. You could compare it to something like even Cyberpunk, where there are a variety of different approaches that you can take, and that's a game with pretty straightforward combat too. But that game had different approaches you could take to any given situation, and you can crawl in through the ceiling, you can come in from below. Like, there are multiple ways to approach things in these type of games. You know, a game like Metal Gear Solid 5 has a ton of those. This game doesn't really have that. It's a pretty linear experience, even though it's an open world type of game. So I was definitely expecting a bit more options when it comes to the gameplay, but it's pretty straightforward as far as stealth goes. The weird thing is it feels a little dated because you have to stay under the radar for a lot of these quests. You know, you don't have the option to go loud all the time, as in just go in shooting. Because this game has this arbitrary thing where you can't raise the alarm at certain points in the story. So you have to do the stealth. They force you into the stealth as much as you might just want to start shooting things. You don't always have that option. So I thought that that was kind of a dated mechanic when I was hoping for a bit more freedom in this open world Star Wars game. That's something that I felt was a little lacking. Now, the action, once you start shooting, it feels okay. This is another thing where it's pretty basic because you only really have one weapon. You have one blaster, and there are 3 modes, so it does have a little bit more variety in it, and you can unlock different, like, burst fire or stronger fire or single fire. Like, there are different modes you can unlock as the game goes, but the basic formula is you have your plasma blaster, just your regular bullets basically. Then you have ion blaster. This is what you use against shields and robots. And then you have your explosive blast. So you have 3 kind of shooting modes, and each of those have different modes you can unlock. So it adds a little bit of variety, but really you're stuck with this pistol the whole time, and it doesn't feel great. Like it is fine, it is acceptable, but again, it's a pretty basic bare bones combat experience. You have that, you have grenades, and then enemies will drop stronger blasters like machine guns and stuff that you can use only for a short time. So that's part that feels the best, you know, when you have sniper rifles. Again, this is a point where it would be great as an open world game. I would just stand back and pick off a bunch of them with the sniper rifle and then close in. Or maybe if I had more weapons that could be used silently, like silenced weapons and things like that. That's the type of options I want to have in a stealth-based game, open world like this. You don't really have those options, but they have these points in the story where you have to go loud. And like I said, there are points where you're not supposed to raise the alarm, but you can still get away with it sometimes if you sabotage the alarm panels and you shoot somebody before the timer fills up and they alert everybody else. You could still get away with it sometimes. That's the bulk of the gameplay, is the stealth stuff and the shooting stuff. It's pretty basic, bare bones, not really worth writing home about. The rest of the experience, you got lockpicking. It's a different type of lockpicking where it's rhythm based, and I actually kind of like this. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. Fortunately, you can turn it off, but basically you just have a pattern you have to replicate. You have to replicate the timing, press the trigger at the right points with the right timing before it'll unlock. And like I said, you can shut it off if you suck at it. I actually kind of appreciated that they're doing something a little different, because lockpicking minigames are always pretty basic. But there's that, there's the computer hacking, which I don't even think you can fail, so that is just kind of a time waster thing. So those are the bulk of the missions. There's also traversal, where you're doing Uncharted, like climbing on rock walls and using your grapple hook to go between areas, and this is just kind of to fill time. And when you compare it to Jedi Survivor, the most recent Star Wars game from last year, that game had this type of thing too, but it was a lot more engaging because you unlocked different means of traversal as the game goes on. Like you would unlock your force dash effect that you could have, where you can dash forward in the air, you can wall run. There isn't ever an evolution of this gameplay mechanic. It's again just kind of like to stall. It adds a little variety. It's better than just walking somewhere, but really, I don't know why this game is so addicted to that. Occasionally there's like a time-based thing where you gotta wait for the fan to turn off before you can jump over the thing. It's just, again, another basic thing. So we have the 3 main pillars of the campaign. You know, it's just kind of not great. And again, driving this motorcycle is cool, but to me that's just a place to place type of thing. Like you get from point A to point B with this motorbike, and that's about it. I mean, you can do races and stuff. I didn't really feel that compelled to try that. You can upgrade this thing. You can upgrade your spaceship as well, and I just did not feel any driving need to do that. I only really wanted to upgrade my blaster and get the smoke bombs. I thought it was worth pointing out that there are barely even chase scenes with the motorbike in this game, and there is no ability to do combat, really. The only way you can shoot people while you're driving your motorbike is by using the slowdown mechanic. It basically has the same mechanic as like Red Dead Redemption, where you slow down time, you mark your targets, and then you shoot them. You can do this while you're riding the motorbike, but you cannot just whip out the weapon and start shooting. There's no means of doing that like how there is on horseback in Red Dead Redemption or in GTA while you're driving. There is no such mechanic, and even if there was, they barely use it. You get like wanted levels, and then you run away, and then the ones that are still left chasing you, you shoot them with the slowdown mechanic, and that's pretty much it. So the open world wanted aspect is definitely left wanting as well. So there doesn't really feel like as much of a need to have this motorbike other than just as basic transportation. So there's also space combat in this game. It's pretty basic as well, so it doesn't measure up to anything like Squadrons or even Starfield. Starfield was a game that also had space combat, and that game I think did a better job at it. It wasn't exceptional either, but this is really just quite simple, and it's functional, it's fine, it doesn't blow you away. So that's pretty much all the gameplay mechanics. That's how I feel about all of them. So what else does this game have going for it? Overall, I'd say gameplay, not terrible, not bad, not good, not great. It's just right in the middle. So the rest of the game has to be really good in order to make this exceptional overall. So we have a story here that I think had a lot of potential because it's a scoundrel type character. You're playing as a Han Solo type of character, and the concept is you're dealing with all these different syndicates, and it's cool in concept, and in theory it's a pretty standard type of story where there's one last heist you want to do, and you're gathering the different crew members on all the different planets, and then you do the heist, and then there's a very predictable twist, and then the game is over. And it's kind of a rebel story in disguise, because early on in the story you get roped into a job that you think is just a normal break into this vault and steal something, and it turns out it's actually rebels trying to free somebody. That's pretty early, so I don't consider it a spoiler, but I suppose spoiler alert. But I won't give any other spoilers away or anything like that. So you get roped into that. You get a death mark put on you, which means that this person that you tried to break into their palace, they now want you dead. So to remove the death mark from you, you have to go on one last heist, go back into that vault, and that is the main plot of the game. You're trying to remove the wanted mark from your head. So that is the thrust of the story, essentially, and you're gathering these supporting characters. And I would say, honestly, that I ended up liking the main character as the story goes on. And like halfway through it, I was like, okay, she kind of has a personality. I actually kind of appreciate her story arc because at the beginning, she's very naive. And the main joke of the game is that she's kind of dumb, which I was not expecting. But the butt of the joke is the main character you're playing as. She's constantly getting one put over on her. She's getting backstabbed again and again. She's a terrible liar. She's somebody with a heart of gold, so that almost makes her a terrible thief in a way. And I think that it's intentional. It's written that way. And I actually appreciated that because over time she learns not to trust people as readily, and then she has to learn to trust people again. So it's kind of like this story arc, and she grows as a person, and I actually kind of appreciated the story beats as they went along. The supporting cast, I think, is decent, nothing exceptional again. The exception to that is the character of ND5, the robot character. Really cool because this takes place between episode 5 and 6, so in the original trilogy times, and the aesthetics are on point as far as that goes. Like everything down to the font they use in the game is of that style, of that era, and I love that. But this character ND5 is actually from the Clone Wars. We have a prequel era character in the original trilogy era. Really cool concept, and I love bringing that in, and they go even deeper into that at certain points in the story. So I love this kind of merging of the different eras. And there's even like a High Republic ship you gotta break into, which I think it's funny how hard Disney tried to push the High Republic thing, even in Jedi Survivor, the Acolyte, of course, and all these books and comics, and it just never really hit. Nobody really ever was that invested in the High Republic era that they tried to put on. But the prequel era, definitely people are invested in, and I think that they capitalized on that in an interesting way. So like I said, it's very familiar beats as far as the story goes, and I did think that some of the writing was pretty okay. Like, I like some of the jokes and back and forth once the main character Kay starts to get some confidence in her. Some of the one-liners are kind of fun. I like some of the quirkier characters along the way. I like the character who makes bombs, who's constantly talking about blowing things up. I like the character who's more invested in the robot gadgets. There's little funny things along the way that I actually enjoyed. And more than that, I actually really enjoyed the aesthetics of all the different worlds you go to. You got like 4 different worlds. You got a jungle world, you got a wintry world, you got Tatooine, the desert world, and you've got this other planet that uses wind a lot, and they harvest the wind. That's how they generate energy and stuff. So I like the different worlds and the lore. If you're a Star Wars fan, it's hard to recommend this to anybody who's not a Star Wars fan, but if you are, it's cool to see like Jawas in there, and even the Sand People and Jabba the Hutt. You can see Boba Fett in an Easter egg. You see Han Solo in Carbonite, because that's where he is in Jabba's palace. You can see Lando in the Sabacc minigame, which I actually kind of like the card minigame. It's kind of like their own version of Blackjack, and you can use Nix to cheat at the game. And I like that minigame. I love those kind of minigames in open world games. I can't tell you how many hours I spent playing poker in Red Dead Redemption, for example. But that's just an aside, but you can see Lando in the Sabacc games at one point. So there are things in the open world as well. I think they do a good job at respecting the lore of Star Wars, and they show you little bits and pieces. There's a part where you go in a Sarlacc pit in one of the side quests. So there are lots of little Easter eggs like that. If you're a Star Wars fan, you might enjoy. The other little mechanics that they add in, like they have reputation system with all the different factions, and at points in the story you're supposed to pick one faction or the other. And I didn't really think that this mechanic worked all that well, because there's not really a reason to side with one over the other. It's not really communicated like, oh, if I side with this one, I'm going to have more unlocks for my pistol, and this one is going to have more unlocks for my motorbike. There isn't that clear communication of what the manifestation of this is going to be. And ultimately, you get one faction mad at you, all you have to do is some of their missions and they're on your side again. So it just feels pointless. It doesn't really affect the story much at all. So it's just a gimmick, in my opinion. I don't think it really does all that much for the story. The other big mechanic is a lot of your unlocks are tied to particular characters. So there are characters, and the story forces you to do some of these, where you have to unlock different things for your motorbike, like a speed boost or a jump, and you have to unlock stuff for your ship. You have to meet certain characters and do quests for them to unlock these things. So that's a lot of the side quests is tied to this progression system. I actually like that progression system because it makes the side quests not just a way of getting money, like there is that progression in there. So I think that that is a solid system, but it doesn't feel necessary. Like I didn't have that driving urge to do that. So on the technical side of things, I have seen a lot of issues where people are having crashes in performance. I did have 2 crashes. I'm playing on the Xbox Series X in performance mode, and performance was pretty solid across the board. It felt smooth. I didn't feel excessive stuttering or anything like that. I had those 2 crashes, and I had one weird glitch where the ion blaster that you get is used to, you shoot at these fusion coil things, which will open doors and stuff like that. One time, the first time it shows up, it didn't work, and I had to exit out of the game and boot back up. I didn't find any of those things really all that worth mentioning, but it's just everybody's talking about the technical issues. I didn't really have many significant glitches other than those couple crashes that I had. Other than that, it ran pretty smoothly on the Xbox. I think the visuals are solid. A lot of people are talking about the faces, and some of them do look pretty bad, and the animations are not there. Other than the more in-depth cutscenes that happen during the story, the baseline where you're just in the in-game engine doesn't look all that great, and sometimes it can look pretty terrible, but I think that that's kind of minor in the grand scheme of things. The graphics overall, I think in the open world, it looks pretty good. I like the way the cities look. I like the aesthetics. The atmosphere is really good. The sound design is good. And the music's actually really cool too, because they have that Star Wars orchestral soundtrack mixed in with all, like this bassier kind of electronic thing. And I think it's a fusion that actually works. I actually appreciate the music in this game. So final verdict, I think it's worth saying that I paid for a single month of Ubisoft Plus to play this, which is $18 a month. So I paid $18 to play this game, and then I canceled it right away. So as far as how much I spent on it, I feel I got my value's worth. I might even go back and do a little bit more of the side content. But yeah, like I said, nothing that this game really does excels in any way. There are so many Star Wars games I would recommend first, like Jedi Fallen Order, Jedi Survivor. If you want to play something that's not a Jedi-based Star Wars game, there's something like the Bounty Hunter game that was recently remastered. There's like Republic Commando, which is like a shooter. And there's other Star Wars games I would recommend first before I would say go ahead and give this one a try. But if you played all the other Star Wars games and you like Star Wars and you're invested in the universe, give it a shot. $18. It's hard to say no to that. If you can get the game on sale, for sure. Full price, no way. Overall, I ended up enjoying my time with it, but it's not exceptional in any way. So I would probably give it like a 6 out of 10. You know, it's just over the mark where I would just barely recommend it if you can get it on sale or something like that. I don't regret playing it. I think how people are treating it is a bit much, that it's like the worst thing ever. But then again, when you see the credits roll by at the end, and it's just hundreds and hundreds of names, and just millions and millions of dollars poured into this project, it is not worthy of that. Like, the potential for this project was so much higher than what they ended up with, and it just ends up feeling a little disappointing. It's frustrating. So that's my opinion on this game, guys. I think the backlash against it is a little overblown, but it's definitely not going to set the world on fire. So that's where I'm at with it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy, and we'll see you guys in the next review. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.